Fox News, wow. They're dealing with more issues when it comes to real consequences behind when they tell these fake news stories. And a lot of times people don't understand what the reality of many situations are. But there is the ongoing back and forth going on, lawsuits going on from Smartmatic with Fox News. And they had a bit of a victory when one particular person that was going back and forth on this was exonerated of her connections to these lies about the voting machines. But they did have a few other consequences when it came to their particular company when they tried to get things pushed aside and these lawsuits dismissed. Let's watch what is going on with Fox News and these Smartmatic lawsuits.
Our company Smartmatic is suing Fox Corporation, the parent of Fox News, for $2.7 billion, accusing the network and 3 of its hosts of pushing bogus election conspiracies that they knew were not true. The lawsuit also names the former president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and legal associate, Sidney Powell. They all stand accused of spinning a fake tale with zero evidence that Smartmatic's voting technology was somehow compromised and to blame for the former president's election loss. The defamation lawsuit filed today in Manhattan states, without any true villain, defendants invented one. Defendants decided to make Smartmatic the villain in their story.
So this week, a judge did reject Fox News's motion. They were looking to dismiss the $2.7 billion lawsuit that Smartmatic has been put on the network. Now the thing is although it's going to continue on, these lawsuits are quite a bit difficult to win because the plaintiff here, in this case, of course, Smartmatic, has to prove that the person, or in this case, Fox News, was acting with actual malice, so that they're like this preconceived idea that they're doing it specifically to harm Smartmatic and maybe not just to push some propaganda in the favor of Donald Trump. So in this particular case, Smartmatic does have a strong case, regardless of the high level that they do have to prove here, but it does rely pretty heavily on segments like this from Tucker Carlson. Watch.
Last night, in a segment about voter fraud and investigations into it, we told you about Sidney Powell, the former federal prosecutor, and her claim that roughly 7 million votes were secretly changed on election night by rigged vote counting software. Well, in the last 24 hours since we did that, we've heard from a lot of people about that segment, including people in the White House and people close to the president. Like us, they have concluded that this election was not fair. Like us, they are willing to believe any explanation for what happened. Like us, they have not seen a single piece of evidence showing that software changed votes. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. It might have happened. It means they haven't seen any evidence that it happened. And by they, we are including other members of Donald Trump's own legal team. They have not seen Powell's evidence either. No testimony from employees inside the software companies, no damning internal documents, no copies of the software itself. So that's where we are. Sidney Powell came on Fox this morning and suggested we may not have to wait much longer. I fully expect, she says, that we will be able to prove all of it in a court within the next 2 weeks. Well, as far as we're concerned, that is great news. If Sidney Powell can prove the technology companies switched millions of votes and stole a presidential election, she will have almost single-handedly uncovered the greatest crime in the history of this country, and no one will be more grateful for that than us.
There's a lot of ifs, would-be's, could-be's, hopefullys, and maybes in that entire statement. But folks who listen religiously to people like Tucker Carlson didn't hear those parts. They heard Sidney Powell is gonna come up with this next, in a couple weeks, all of this damning information that's gonna really put it on the map of what's going on. Now they'll forget that for the past year and a half, these lawsuits, or at least these challenges to the election in 2020 have been seen in front of judges. They've been adjudicated in courts. And every time it's, you don't have anything. Then Mike Pillow says, I've got the best, I got all of the information, it's right here on the screen. He did like a 2-day symposium that had nothing. Then Rudy Giuliani says, I've got the goods. And then Donald Trump then says, oh, there's more information. There still has been no information. There's been no proof. But in saying this, as Tucker Carlson showed just there, there's so far nothing. He said there's nothing, then he went on another 30 seconds of how much there will probably be, or possibly, or could be. That's the whole point about this, is to continue to confuse you, to make sure that that the viewers are still drinking from this trough of lies, that something might happen. And then they go off and tell their friends, you know, Smartmatic totally rigged the election. because that's the quick and short way to get to the bottom of these types of things for those types of viewers. So anyways, so that skepticism that he was pushing there is what helped the judge come to these conclusions, by the way, to continue this lawsuit. So let's look at this. The filing from New York Supreme Court Judge David Cohen notes that Carlson questioned whether there was any real evidence behind the quote stolen election narrative. Since the judge identified Carlson as arguably the single most influential conservative media personality in the United States, it is precisely because of his skepticism that the case might meet the standard of actual malice, because they continued to air these election conspiracies when he did point out there is nothing. If Tucker Carlson knows that there's nothing, Fox News probably knows that there's nothing, but they continue to push it. What was the reason? To lie to you, maybe to destroy Smartmatic. Smartmatic thinks it's because of them. Maybe they can pull that off in the court. So by the way, back to Tucker Carlson, because Fox News has won lawsuits citing Tucker Carlson and his lack of real facts before. It's just all the irony goes in this big circle here. So let's go to these details of what happened before. And I always love quoting this. U.S. District Judge Mary Kay Voskuil's opinion leaned heavily. This is when they forced Fox News to continue to have to deal with Tucker Carlson, or they actually let them off the hook for Tucker Carlson, which he goes and does his thing. Anyways, they leaned heavily on the arguments of Fox's lawyers. The general tenor of the show should then inform a viewer that Tucker Carlson is not, quote, stating actual facts about the topics he discusses, and is instead engaging in exaggeration and non-literal commentary. Exaggeration and non-literal commentary. You would wonder if maybe there's one of these legal things that they could put before Tucker's show that would let viewers know what you're about to watch is a dramatic reading of the news. It's also a dramatic opinion of the news that actually is not based in much fact. Let's continue on, because that judge also continued, and she said, Fox persuasively argues that given Mr. Carlson's reputation, by the way, Fox argues this, any reasonable viewer arrives with an appropriate amount of skepticism about the statement he makes. Fox News is telling the judge, hey, don't blame us, we're just an entertainment show. Are you gonna come after Reno 911 because they depict cops in a certain way? That's not necessarily what always happens. Same thing here. Tucker Carlson is depicting a news person, or maybe a pundit that means what he's saying. He doesn't. It's all written, it's all scripted. It's a comedy show. It's a sitcom. So that's what Fox News is.